So before we get started, point of privilege, who's wearing jeans of some sort today? Rock on. Okay, there we go.
Was that, I didn't get that.
So everybody else is
Yeah.
disqualified.
So
I just, you get brownie points.
first time in 35 years that I wore jeans.
It's really because I want to highlight this fact that Steve was wearing jeans.
The fashion police has
Here,
entered the building.
Okay. Anyway, listen, I've enjoyed spending my Fridays with you guys for months/years, and I feel like we should have a little bit of fun. It's a Friday afternoon. So if you're predisposed to wearing jeans, you're welcome. If not, you can wear whatever you want. Not exactly. Anyway, within reason.
We're devolving.
Yes, exactly. So I will now call this meeting to order for the spin out of disorder. And welcome everybody. And Mr. DeBerry, would you mind providing the roll call? Mr. Carter said he is here. He left some in the car. Yep.
Awesome. Okay, I'll make the roll call on the Twitter.
Here.
Mr. Cleveland,
Here.
Mr. Carter, here. Mr. Moore, here. Ms. Wilson will be absent today. Okay. I'll do the alternates also. Mr. Patrick,
Present.
Ms. Weitzel, Delegate Hayes is here. Dr. Kay. Here. And Ms. Wallace. Here.
Okay, we have a quorum. Thank you. And then we'll move to the approval or if there are any modifications for the agenda that was sent to you all. Are there any, is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Thank you. Is there a
Second.
Thank you. It's been properly moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor of approving the agenda, say aye. Any opposed? Okay, the agenda has been approved. We'll now move on to public comments. Is there anybody from the public who wishes to make a comment today? Okay, hearing none. Yes, Mr. Crum.
I apologize, but I do know we have some people that have joined us remotely, including Mr. Lockaby.
Do you want to acknowledge them? Yeah.
Sure. So, right, so Mr. Lockery, our counsel is on the line, Mr. Knight, Vice President, Danella Construction, and Mr. DeHaven, Vice President, CTC are online, and I think Nick Pescarelli might be joining in a bit.
Okay, thank you for allowing that, or highlighting that. Mr. DeBerry, have there been any public comments submitted previously?
No,
Okay. The meeting minutes from the May 10th meeting have been provided to you in advance for review. Is there a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Okay, Mr. Carter moved and Mr. Moore second. Thank you. Any discussion? All those in favor of approving the minutes from the May 10th meeting signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes. And now, Mr. DeBerry, would you please provide the project management update?
Sure, thank you very much. So there'll be two major agenda items today, the project management update, and GTS will be providing an update on the BEAD process based on a couple of meetings they've been to and some good work that they've done. Okay, so the outline, what I'd like to talk about today in terms of the project update is we're going to go through the permit construction map, and I also have developed a timeline at a macro level to kind of show us where we're actually at in the process. Happy to announce that we completed the 811 application process with a lot of help from Danella Construction. We're doing an actual field locate test next Thursday. Once that's completed, we will be in the system. And the important thing about that is it provides Danella the opportunity to begin to develop a localization plan for pushing fiber through the conduit after 1 July. So that's really critical to us on meeting our timelines. And also we've renewed the general liability insurance for 2025, and it includes fiber cut insurance, which will protect the authority during the time before we fully transition to GPS and the lease agreement. And then just a quick update and a timeline, thanks to PCM Fitzpatrick, who helped put together a timeline for recruiting the SNA executive director position.
Okay.
Okay, so what I'm going to do today, and I'll try to hold down the numbers a bit. I want to go back and forth between these two slides. This is a slide that you're used to, which depicts the permitting construction status of the ring, with green being either completed construction or under construction, yellow meaning ready for construction. In this case, really, there's a permitting process that I'll talk about in a bit. But I want to tag team with this particular slide, which will give us a macro view of the timeline. So I'm going to go back and forth between the slides to try to make sense out of that. So if we look at the overall map, we've completed almost 59 miles of conduit installation, and we have about 9 miles of conduit construction underway right now. And if I add in the 19 miles for the Chesapeake co-build, which is nearing completion, just some stitching together of railroads, and discounting Virginia Beach, where we're going to go through this re-permitting process, we actually have 100% of the available mileage either completed or under construction. So we continue to make good progress there. I mentioned that Danella will be working on a mobilization plan to push fiber through the conduit. They can push about 7,000 feet per, I think it's 7,000 feet per, is it per day or per week, per team, Ken? It's a lot.
Yes, Steve, and it'll be about 7,000 feet per day per cable crew on site.
Right. So that'll allow him to really make up a lot of time in the timeline. You can do the math for the mileage and based on the number of teams he mobilized. But once Ken develops that, we'll brief the board next month, and I think we'll be in really good shape. So what I'd like to do is sort of go around the horn on the map and look at the northern quadrant, which represents the city of Norfolk at first. If you look at the green, we've completed about 9.1 out of 10 miles on zone 1, which basically goes down Military Highway down 264 up through downtown, through Norfolk State, through downtown, and we're finalizing route changes to mitigate construction here. But I wanted to show you, the reason I broke Norfolk out into zones 1 and 2 rather than one timeline is, as you recall in previous conversations, there's a potential client base, and I've been working with GTS to try to expedite that particular portion. We've completed 9.1 out of the 10 miles. We have one railroad that we're awaiting a flagman, which will probably be in August. That's been in the system for about a month now. It takes about 90 days. And we're looking at a slight revision in the Brambleton Federal Courthouse area to alleviate some congestion that's there. We're working directly with the city of Norfolk, CTC and Danella to pick the best route. All that said and done, we should button up this part of the project by 1st of September. So if I go back to zone 2, there's about 9.9 of 11 miles done there. That particular route goes up Military Highway, and then on the west side, it goes back down Hampton Boulevard. So it goes through the Old Dominion, EBMS, Norfolk General route. There we have several railroad crossings that we're working, and again, Danella will be able to start pushing fiber through both of those zones after July 1st. And on that particular one, with all that said and done, we're looking at late September to complete that project. Now, I feel confident in these dates. Things are subject to change, but I think the team has gone to great length to identify all the issues as we know it. I think we're working, we have spreadsheets that address all the issues, and I feel pretty comfortable with the Norfolk area. Okay, any questions before I move on? Okay, if we look at Suffolk, Suffolk, like Virginia Beach, has the most fiber. They have 36 miles. We've actually completed about 28 of the 36 miles in Suffolk, which is about 78%. We have 3 issues that we're working with the city of Suffolk on that will drive this date you see of early to mid-October. I'm going to take a few minutes and go through each of those. The first of those, and we've talked about all of these, just we have more clarity at this point in time. If you look at zones 6 and 7, we've completed nearly all of that mileage in 6 and 7, and what we have to do is just kind of stitch together zone 6 and 7 where they meet. There's a retention pond. We're actually meeting with City of Suffolk engineers on Monday to finalize a plan on how to tie that together. So that's less than a 1-week turnaround once we are able to come to an agreement on that. Probably one of the biggest issues, and we talked about this a couple times, is Zone 1, where there's major construction occurring on Highway 58 Holland Road. Suffolk's contractor is Curtis Contracting. We had initially hoped, so that's about a 5-mile route. There's Zone 1's about 5 miles in length. Curtis has an area of about 1.5 miles where we can't get into because of just the construction and the amount of fiber and things that are going in. We need to respect that contract with the city. So what we did is we started on the east and west sides of that zone, and of the 5 miles, we've already completed 2.1 miles of that. We believe that we're hoping that Curtis will be able to turn over to us in July or August.
So is Mr. Horn.
Yeah.
Amazing.
So at this stage, I mean, we've the staffs, I'm going to say that all the SNA staff, CTC, Vanilla, have worked hand in hand with Suffolk on that, and I think we put our best foot forward, and we're okay with that. The second issue that was the second issue. The third issue we talked about was the VDOT request for a route change regarding the SIPSA flyover. That's near, if you've been down 58, you know where the truck weigh station is. It's near that. That particular route, there's about a 1.5 mile segment where they've asked us to reroute. CTC and Danella have looked at that. I believe we have a final design, and Mr. Moore, that's actually, we resubmit that permit to you, because even though VDOT grabs hold of any type of project like that, it's your permit. So CTC is getting close to be able to turn that around, and then once we get approval, we'll go ahead and move out smartly on that. So those 3 issues are driving what we see to be a early October completion for that portion.
Stephen, I was going to ask you about railroads. Any railroads?
There are 3 railroads, and Jeremy has about completed those. I think one's been submitted, but again, we've got that 90-day window. So
Right, you still got to wait on railroad flagging operations,
Yes.
right?
Yeah, we're seeing a little bit less than 90-day turnaround by the flagman, but I mean, that's what we've got to go with. Worst case, these would be worst case scenarios. Okay, so we're beginning to work that in that process. Any questions on Suffolk before I move over to portion? I know it's a lot of data, but I felt like I owed you at a macro level to kind of tie together, so what you see on that chart is all this green. You go, okay, so why aren't we done? Well, there are intersections that require police work on weekends and railroads and bridges. So we have 37 special crossings on this one project.
Yeah.
Dr. Day,
No, I'm sorry.
Okay, let's look at Portsmouth for a second. As we know, actually, zone 1 in Portsmouth, 8 of 8 miles completed. That was the first construction work that we actually did. And
The first 100%.
and so that's been out there for a while. I'll call your attention to zone 2. That's comprised of the Western Freeway Bridge and the portion of the zone that leads into the Midtown Tunnel. And as you know, at our last board meeting, we approved the in-kind for between the SNA and Portsmouth, $1.3 million. Portsmouth City Council approved it. Mr. Carter has signed it. I think it's on its way to me, and then we will reimburse the city for that. Again, we saved right at $900,000 by teaming with the city on that work. So it's a win-win. We've nearly finished the design of Zone 2. It's a little tricky, not the Western Freeway part, because Ken's team will just push fiber through that, but we have to connect, and there's an adjacent to the a port that we're working through. That said, worst case scenario, we're looking at mid-September that portion of the fiber ring. Okay, can't see it much on the map here, but part of the ring is we connect the cities of Norfolk and Portsmouth via the Midtown Tunnel. We're working with VDOT right now. We met a week and a half ago, and they requested one particular change in design, and we're meeting with them again next week, and to determine just make tie a ribbon around, make sure that we're meeting all of their requirements. And Mr. Lockaby's doing some work for us on in-kind and what that might look like. So that one, because we're dealing with VDOT and the state, we put some lead time in there, which is why we're showing November. We said we'd finish the project by the end of November, and I see that being done hopefully by mid-November. Okay. Sure I got it. Okay, good. Chesapeake co-build. This is one of those situations where the team for Chesapeake, there are 19 miles of Chesapeake co-build. If you look on the map in the northern quadrant between Suffolk's zone 7 and 8, that's actually Chesapeake property, and that's about 2 miles of the Chesapeake co-build. You see how it connects nicely with our ring. And then in the southern part, you see 17 miles that basically goes from Suffolk Zone 3 to Virginia Beach Zone W. They've completed about 99.9% of that construction. They have 10 to 12 railroads that they're working through, and so I think working with Jay Crail and the team and Dan Costano, we painted the worst picture, but we're thinking that we'll have that turnover to the authority early November. Ken's team can certainly push the fiber through that 19 miles in 30 days. So I believe we're okay on that. And then the two legal counsels, City of Chesapeake and Mr. Lockaby, will be completing the co-build agreement, which is similar to the in-kind, and we would owe Chesapeake $1.7 million for that. Again, we saved upfront in design and construction about $1 million, and then there was an additional probably $1 million saved between ourselves and the City of Chesapeake. They cut out a pretty big loop of fiber that they would have built. So worst case, we're looking in November on that. All right, so now I need to camp out a little bit now on Virginia Beach. So I feel like I need to go through the process again so that everybody understands. Peter and myself and the team have been living this 24/7 now for quite a while. Here's how the process went. CTC designed, part of their contract for $900,000 was to complete 100% design of the fiber ring and submit permits in conjunction with development. We submitted the permits to Virginia Beach. Many were rejected because they wanted us to follow their GIS CAD data for city utilities, which we did. And then when we got out in the field, and Danella actually walked and called in their locates, we began to see some conflict between what they thought the lines were that we snapped to and where actual utilities So, Danilo, working with City of Virginia Beach Construction Oversight and CTC, basically has now redrawn those lines. 27 of the 29 permits are impacted. And we're finding that in some cases, the original design marries up with what Danilo found in the field. So Peter helped us facilitate a meeting last Wednesday with City of Virginia Beach permitting and some senior leadership. And we went through the process. I think we both learned some things. The issue is ordinances are ordinances and you follow ordinances. And so, the issue is not people in the field who are working hard and doing the work. It's that. So the commitment we got from Virginia Beach was that they would quickly turn around any permits. We selected permits A, B, C, O, 1 and 2, because we thought that they presented a good mix of easy, hard, and in between. Actually, on permit O is the only permit we've made progress. We built 2.6, almost 2.7 miles of 3.5 miles on that permit O. So that's about three miles of work that's been done. We processed a change order to do this resubmit, which we did. And I have a $50,000 asset. I've talked to Matt, and we're going to use that to do this test on ABC 1 and 2. And what Matt's hoping is that we can use a lot of the original design specs that were submitted with the work that Danilo has done to sharpen the pencil and the turnaround. Because it takes about 30 hours to fully submit a permit. And in Ken's team, working with Virginia Beach Construction, we've identified everything that's allowable to be fixed in the field, but it still leaves 27 and 29 that need to be, they have to be resubmitted. I mean, it's not like a pen and ink change, it's a resubmittal.
Beyond the delay in the project, does this cost us additional permit cost or redesign cost? I'm sorry, beyond the delay in the project, has this cost us more money in terms of resubmitting permits and project costs?
Well, it cost about $270,000 for the change order that the board approved back in July of last year when we went back and resubmitted. What we agreed to when we met with the beach and where Matt's helping us with Ken is we're going to use these 6 to determine what we think, extrapolate what we think the cost and timeline is. I can say this, talking to Ken, we have to resubmit, we have to re-permit and construct 3 miles of fiber per week to meet our timeline. So there's no doubt in my mind, Ken's team can do that. He's willing to put in the extra assets now, but we basically had to demobilize and move crews to Suffolk because I'm going to have to pay him as a contract, and I can't have him, not fully mobilized. So I think everybody's working hard at this time. I just have to be honest, I can't answer your question on cost. It's $30 hours to completely do a permit. And so you don't just pen and ink it. You got to do offsets. You've got to mark it and do that.
This would be the 3rd time we've had to pay that cost, those 30 hours. That'll be the 3rd time we've had to redo that cost.
So can I ask?
And I don't know what the hours are this time.
Yeah, so to the 3rd time piece. So let me see if I can translate what you said initially.
Sorry.
We went through, I'm going to call it phase 1,
Yes.
right? And we had CTC submitted designs using the GIS that they had available to them from Virginia Beach.
Phase 1 was
Phase 1.
No, phase 1 was based on Matt's team, and he put his best guy out there. They actually went out and
They walked it.
They walked every mile. They used GIS.
GIS.
And you look for things like manholes and vaults that say, okay, there's a Dominion Power utility here. And so then they do the design based on that. They can't see underneath the ground because you can't call in a locate
till you get the permit.
Right, because you get 14 days to start construction. So, we could have paid $1 million up front and they could have done locating.
So I understand, so that was submitted,
That's one.
right? And then we were, the response was, well, actually, we want you to use this utility GIS and redo these because it's more than 3 feet off of the original engineering from CTC.
It's city GIS, there's two forms of utilities. There's the city GIS that we snap to. There's also third-party utilities like.
But Virginia Beach asked us to please
Yes.
redo all 30?
Yeah.
So we did that. So now here we are again. Janelle's out in the field. And what they're finding is we have to redo them a third time, and which closely measures what we actually did the first time.
Now, let me say this, and it's about, I mentioned ordinance, it's about process and ordinance, because this process is the same thing we went through with every city. Okay, it's just that some ordinances allow more, okay, Danilo, you got this. I mean, they're FCC approved, they know what fines are, just go fix it. Well, we can't just go fix it. We have to, and you can't just redline it. You gotta, you gotta do offsets. And Matt, you might be helping me with this engineering stuff, I don't even understand.
So, no, I mean, I think, I just want to make sure that we understand the process that we've gone through to date. And I think Catherine asks a good question for which we don't yet have an answer, which is, are we going to be responsible for this? I mean, there's obviously a lot of manpower that's being used for what I'm going to call phase 3, not to mention the fact that we've slipped our time frame. So the answer is with TBD, we're going to see what ABC, O2Z, whatever they're doing. And then
Lost
traffic.
now.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think everybody, are there any questions beyond what has been stated thus far? But
Was it the first phase, we had to break them down to 1,000 feet?
1 mile, yeah.
1 mile, excuse me.
And that's a differentiator. We pushed back on that at first. I think Peter worked with that. We pushed back on that, but then when we saw how it was going, we figured, okay, well, maybe 1 mile permit would be easier to get through than an 8 mile, but it's each foot.
Initially, there was a mile per permit, which doesn't make sense for the entire beach. It's like, maybe some areas, like maybe Townsend, place that's congested, but, so we talked to Public Works about that. They'll agree that, yeah, you can do multiple, but still, it's a process.
But we're still hopeful we're gonna get across the finish line November / before the end of the year.
Yes, so Matt, you and Ken can help me, but I think that, I say yes on that because for sure we should be to get ABC. If we get those done, that gives him the bandwidth that he can remobilize. I mean, Ken's willing to put eight crews out there. I mean, we can knock it out, but I don't, and so from my perspective, I'm worried about timeline. I'm also worried about being a good partner with my construction company who's mobilized and demobilized.
So can I take a moment and ask Ken, and then I'm gonna ask Matt, is there any additional information that we think that we need to have as an authority that hasn't been discussed so far?
No, I don't think additional. I think the big thing is if regarding Virginia Beach specifically, if CTC is able to, get the permits resubmitted and Virginia Beach is able to get them approved, really in a manner that's going to be able to sustain bringing in our crews, and that 3 miles per week will continue to grow every week and or month that, those permits are not approved. So that is additional resources. For those additional resources to work, we need Miss Utilities to cooperate to get the existing lines located. Traffic control, there is a trickle down effect that goes to, to put this much into it all at once compared to having a longer timeline to stretch it out. We Danilo are able to do this, but there is going to, of course, be the requirement from CTC be able to submit the permits and stay out ahead. So the crews can basically leapfrog each other as they work through the permits.
Sure.
And we certainly understand that and are very much willing and able to do that and keep up at that pace.
Great. Thank you, both of you, for being on here today, as you have been in the past. I think you've been great partners, and listen, we're going through 5 cities. Everybody has a different way of operating. We're seeing that now, and we're working through it.
Like I said too, in the meeting last week, I think city manager's office was involved. So everybody is very aware of it and have all committed to make sure that we emphasize on this one. Matter of fact, they're waiting. So they're pretty much caught up with a lot of permits in the city. So they're really anxious as well as everybody else sees it happen.
Great. Thanks, Peter. I appreciate that.
Can I ask a simplistic question?
Ms. Ritter.
Is it 30 hours per permit or 30 hours concurrently to do all the permits?
So Matt's initial estimate when we started talking about worst case scenario, what's this gonna cost me? It would, a ballpark is 30 hours per permit. If you have to do
And
complete.
30 hours on the part of the permit issuer.
30 hours to redesign and submit the permit.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, so that's on the construction.
Yeah, I'm sorry, yes, this is.
Yes.
How long to get the permit issued, Peter?
Well, that's where I think we had a conversation last week. They're looking at 3-4 days to turn this thing around.
Yep.
So if the pace that we talked about does require that attention to detail.
So the Virginia Beach Utilities team offered, they've got 5 or 6 people, and they said they would be in the field every day with Danilo. So that will shorten that timeline. So the issue now is you've got a funnel. I've got to build enough water in that funnel, meaning design-ready permits to push to Ken so that he can mobilize.
But 30 hours per permit, is that sequential or is it at the same time? But I mean, do that one person who does it takes 30 hours to prepare for each permit? Or are there multiple?
Okay, so again, look, it is. Again, I picked 30 because that's based on what we've seen in the past. If we had to completely redo the permit and do all the markings and have the CAD stuff and engineers get involved, it would take up to 30 hours per permit to resubmit to the city of Virginia Beach. Matt's saying by using the prior submission with the red line that Danilo has done on the routes, it should shorten that a bit, but I can't define it. There's no linear equation that will tell me what that is.
Oh, okay.
It's not sequential though. I think that's the question you're asking in terms of just the timeline, right? So that's the hours of, the person hours required in our estimate right now based on the procedure processes in place. But there's multiple engineers and drafts people involved in that. So like right now we have 1, 2, 3, A, B, 1, 2, A, B, C, and O in progress. Ken, you'll actually be receiving A and O today to put your eyes on before it gets resubmitted. Both of those are being worked on at the same time. So there's parallel tasking going on to make that happen. I think if I understand you.
That was essentially the question. Thank you.
Thank you, man.
Yep.
Sorry. Yeah, and so this is important because I think what Matt just said, Peter's going to be providing that input in terms of a metric report card to his leadership. When do we submit it? When do we get it back? Because that will help us determine timeline and cost.
So our big fun celebration, we're gonna be bundled up instead of in our shorts and t-shirts.
Well, now, that's one thing you can't predict either.
That's true. This is true.
So you gotta watch Seinfeld, you go, Newman.
Okay, so any other questions about this portion of the discussion?
Okay. I knew if I were doing something with that. All right, so here's an eye test, so I'll ask you guys to.
We need to work on your font size.
That's right. Hey,
No.
it's
Oh,
tough.
no, that doesn't help at all. It's more like this.
It's tough being an ED. Okay, let's see. All right, so as you recall, last meeting, the board approved with some comments, the draft job description that we put together. We discussed at the macro level, the compensation package was $140,000 to $150,000 plus competitive benefits. And I'll say this, working on Kelly Arledge from Bob staff is just terrific. She's their HR. She's working with me on that, and Mike Lockaby has engaged with DRS and has provided some information to them, and it appears that if the board wants to go that route, that we qualify, the position would qualify as a DRS position, which would
That's a big deal.
make it more attractive
We
to
need
someone in the system.
Yeah.
So we, working with Kelly, we're pulling all that together. The CIOs are providing some additional potential places that we might advertise, and so we've got about 5 or 6 so far. Kelly's looking at announcing the job early in July with we'll have it out there for about 60 days. And so, again, this is a notional timeline, but we would conduct first interviews in August and September, so we'll leave it up to the board. We have a committee that works for Chair McClellan. Either that group or others could do the interviews, and then based on some experience that Laura's had, mentioning maybe second interviews in mid-September. In the October timeframe, select a candidate and start to negotiate. She made a good point that sometimes folks don't want to turn over until January or something like that. My commitment, I don't think I will make a commitment that, if you need another month, I'm not going to leave. I'm not leaving the project until we got the person on board.
But what does your wife say?
She's not listening, so she does. Can I say that? She does not listen, so I can say that I.
Are you sure?
It was nice knowing you, Stephen.
Wives are very resourceful.
Yes.
Stephen is extra fun today with his jeans on.
I already have stress.
So I would just add only to that, just from my availability, I'm going to be out the last half of August. So I would probably we'll figure out our committee to convene right after Labor Day.
Sure.
I think that makes sense for
Oh,
everybody's schedule in general. And we do have a committee to review. Now, I am the only commissioner outside the alternates that's on that committee. So if we have other commissioners who'd like to participate in the initial call through of resumes, I'm going to need y'all to let me know that as well. That makes sense.
Yes.
Okay.
And then one thing too, just to add to the timeline, if in a recruitment we're fortunate enough to get a lot of applicants or several, then it makes sense to do a first interview. But if there's only like 3 or something, then sometimes skipping the first interview makes more sense. However, sometimes within the first 3 minutes if it's the right candidate, so then that's when the first interview, being shorter, not in person, can also be efficient. I mean, it's just kind of like art.
Yeah, I agree with that, but we're dating for 30 minutes and we're marrying somebody for a long time. And I just think that short shift the interview process and the checking references and all of that, because this is a big project. There's lots of moving pieces, as Stephen just went through. And I'd hate to jump to a conclusion and end up with a bad candidate and we have to start over.
Yeah, that's a good point too. It gives more time for fact finding. And sometimes impressions change from first interview to second interview too, both ways.
I want to do reference checks and all those other good things.
And if we're gonna do the first interview virtual, which is what this says, I would definitely do a second interview in person.
No.
Make sure it's the same person.
So I think this is a very reasonable timeframe. I would just say first interviews beginning in September, that would be the only thing. And then again, we'll remind everybody about the process and if you want to participate in the interview committee. in advance of that time. So,
I think we have enough, I got a little bit of a carryover in G&A, so I think that, with the compensation package is a little more than I put in the budget, but I'll come back to you on that, but I think I have enough that we could cover, for that timeline. But what we want to do is finish the construction in November, sign a $2 million a year contract with our strategic partner, and you don't have to worry about
Money.
$1,000.
okay. Any other questions or comments? Please continue to consider this amongst your network, and if you have good folks, give them the high sign that this is a great job, and we are a fun Friday group. And ask if they wear shoes. So, okay. Next week, love to invite our GTS partners to come up. We're gonna give you guys permission to wear jeans too, but.
Yep.
There you go.
Thanks, sir. Good afternoon, everyone.
Thank you. All right, I'm going to be starting and ending with the timeline that'll help us out, figure out where we are. So we all see this timeline that brings up every time. Really going to be focusing on just after the last SNA meeting, there was a DHCD workshop in Richmond that we attended. Really gave us some good information there. And so I have to go over some of that, give some clarification. A lot of it was reminder and refresher, but there's some new things that came to light that I think were pretty good here to explain. So just to recap a little bit, was really just to bring back broadband providers and give them a little update on what's changed with the application process, and really just kind of re-energize everyone. It was kind of a long period after the challenge process, bringing in the data, so we wanted to kind of get everyone back up to speed on how things were working. A lot of it had to deal with the scoring criteria for BEAD applications, and a lot of that focusing around the zip code, or ZICTA, you might hear me say, for the zip code calculation area. That's how they'll be estimating project areas. And please stop me if you have any questions. So the main scoring criteria here, some of this changed just a little bit in the points aspect here. This is about 15 slides. So I'll be going through some of this, and there's some examples here to help break it down a little bit. Really, this first one here, minimal BEAD program outlay, that's really the average lowest cost they have per passing that they can be scoring on. So there'll be a number of, let me change it here to give you a better representation of how much it costs per category here. The cost per passing, affordability, so that's the cost of the service to the person, fair labor practices, speed to deployment. BEAD has a stipulation for sub 3 years. That's 5%. Universality of applications. So for BEAD, you're looking to serve 95 to 100% of that unserved, under, and community anchor institutions. So the portion you need between that 95 and 100% is at 9.9. And then that letter of support from the locality that you're trying to serve. Here, this is a bunch. I won't spend too much time here, but this kind of gives us, this is from DHCD, this is what they provided us as a representation of 3 prospects, 3 applicants going after an area. It kind of breaks down what you might see, or how their scoring kind of works out. Maybe not. So just looking at the first application, one in red, kind of this orange yellow, and the second one in green on this third side here, you can kind of see the breakdown between how the different categories kind of scores out these different applications. Some things to note here is that maybe on this winning side here, the actual per passing was actually more expensive. You can see on the top, for the top category here. They had about an average for affordability of their service. Of course, everyone is doing fair labor practices, which is great. Speed to deployment, kind of interesting here. The first applicant said they can do it in under 3 years, but they had no documentation to support that. Maybe no past performance either to show for it, so they didn't receive any credit there. Whereas you can see in this last one category, they said they can do it under 3 years, and they provided some kind of documentation to prove that. The next column down below, or row rather, universality of applications there. The 95%, the bare minimum, receiving 0 points in the middle. Of course, on the winning side saying, yes, they can serve everyone in that region, getting full credit there. And that letter of support really coming, you could see really coming in handy here, where it's providing the full points. That's a you have it or you don't kind of situation. Really leaning on a letter of support is something that's really going to help make applications stand out. I'll pause any questions there. That's a lot of information.
How does this relate to, I guess, sort of, as Stephen always likes to say, bottom line up front?
Yeah.
How does this relate to the Southside Network Authority? I mean, how many projects did you get? What is the cost? What's the timeline?
Sure. And so also we'll get a little bit further into that. I'll answer your question as we go. We'll go through this. So here, I'm not going to spend too much time on these just because it's pre-challenge data, so this data will change. But this just goes to show you the area, and you might notice that Suffolk does not have anything lit up. One of the stipulations for BEAD is no prior funding, so things like RDOF and VATI kind of takes it out the running. So any other projects there, and likely there are, what we'd love to look at, but pre-challenge data is not too much we're going to be looking at in terms of Suffolk. But you can see here the zip code areas in each of the different regions and how they kind of break up. Now, why this is kind of important is because, so this is, my direction, this is underserved, unserved, and as the shade gets darker into red, it's more densely, the higher the number of the category.
I'm sorry, can you explain that one more time?
Yeah, the darker the shade of red is the more concentrated in that area. So there's more, instead of having the dots that we're used to scattered all over, I thought this might help just make it a bit easier to see from further away. This is unserved, so each one of these regions has a number of unserved in them. The darker the red, the more unserved.
More persons or?
House, yeah, the households, yeah.
Okay, that's weird.
And this is pre-challenge data.
But, I mean, as I recall, Noel, I mean, you're talking a handful here, a handful there.
Not down in the
Except
red
for,
area.
except for Suffolk and Chesapeake, right?
This is the data that the Fabric has now. So before they add anything or update it with the new challenge data, this is the data that they have now.
But that's just unserved.
So this is just unserved right here.
Okay, I guess the thing that we've seen thus far is the challenge data.
You might have just been seeing the challenge data.
Which didn't result in a whole lot of.
Correct, and they haven't verified it. We can see it, but it's not approved.
Okay.
Community anchor institutions. And then this is total, adding all those up together, making the total eligibility of BEAD sites.
There we go.
So here's the number. This is all everything you saw in maps, but in data form, so you can see all the numbers here. So really, what came to light from the update from DHCD is how they're wanting to approach our application. And so we got a good update there. This first column here, you'll see the number of ZICTAs, those zip code areas for each of the cities that we'll be going after. And so what really came to light is the importance of how you're bundling your application to submit to DHCD.
Can you go back to the
Yeah, absolutely.
question? So you have unserved, 25/3, underserved, 100/20, unserved,
Community.
1/1, 1 gig/1. So, and then you added all that up in the last column.
Correct.
So wouldn't everything under the unserved column include the prior two columns?
Everything under the unserved.
A 1/1 gig. If you don't have 1/1 gig, you certainly don't have 100/20 or 25/3.
Oh, yeah, so this is the community anchor institutions.
Okay, just, sorry.
Yeah, it is, so this is community anchor institutions and these
Understood.
are for households. That's what we can
Okay.
just total that.
So the 100/20 and 25/3 households are different. They're additive.
You're saying these two columns?
Mhm.
Yeah, so if you do not have, up to 100 down and 20 megabits up, you're considered underserved. But if you're not even making the 25 down 3 megabits up, then you're considered unserved. Do not have
Catherine, are you getting what I'm asking?
Oh, I'm sorry, I mean.
You seem to be adding apples.
You're
and
adding
oranges.
underserved and unserved, and if you're in the underserved category, you're automatically already in the unserved category. So you're adding 489 and 142, and you should only have, you're not double counting, it's anybody above 25/3 and less than 100/20.
Okay, I see what you're saying. You're
Yeah,
saying
sorry.
that, you're okay.
That makes sense now. Okay, I was looking at top lines of the numbers, my apologies. So now we have, so the yellow box is approximately 3,500. And then that's your eligibility, and then you go to the next slide. I'm sorry, I totally.
No, you're fine, yeah, so this will, speaking of pre-challenge data, so this number is going to change.
Right.
But pre-challenge data, that's how many unserved, under, and community anchor institutions in the 4 cities that we're looking to have applications for. So what the workshop really brought to light was how we're going to have to bundle our projects for submission as applicants. So under their terms of how it's going to work for projects and their scoring is that you can bundle applications, you can bundle projects per zip code. So that's what we're going to do. But also, you also want to think about submitting them individually, which we're also going to do. The reason behind that is because we can submit a full application just for the whole region. If another provider comes through and wins, just say, let's say this area right here, say 45, it will break this bundle and that project will no longer be good. So they also, suggest that if you're going after a whole area, that you also go after the individual zip codes as well, which is something that we're going to be doing. So we'll be not only submitting a joint application, bundling each project for the entire cities, but then also submitting for each individual zip code. That's not confusing enough. So these are the latest timeline orders that we have from DHCD. Really, it's going to, you can see a lot of TBD on there. It's going to be pending approval of the volume 2, which has a lot of the criteria in it for scoring. Approval of the challenge results. So we finished the challenge process. All the data has been collected. It still needs to be approved. And they still need to take it. NTIA, that is. And then they'll announce after those things happen, they'll announce the start of the BEAD application. The timeline that we do know is that, when the letter of intent submission window will open, when it closes approximately 30 days after, 60 days after, about 2 months. And then about 3 months after that, the window closing for applications. So the process right there taking, itself about 5 months just to go through BEAD. We have some TBAs here for after the DHCD goes through scoring, chooses the applicants that are winning, or that are the winners for those areas. Those get sent to Governor Youngkin's office for recommendation as to be awarded. From there to NTIA, and then from NTIA to give it the green light there.
No, there's a lot of TBD there. Is there any time frame that could be removed for clarity, or is it still a guessing game?
Yeah, it's a guessing game. In the workshop, they were hard pressed to put a timeline on anything. This is the time that they gave us, and this is just a few weeks ago. That's what they're looking at. A few things holding it up is that the approval of volume 2, which you could think is a lot of states have problems around the low cost option, kind of the rate regulation that's been going on, and the approval of the challenge bills. After those two things, really, they can start kicking off the process. This next timeline is after the initial winners are chosen. There's any area that has no applications and no one applied for them, there'll be another window for broadband providers to submit for. These are the areas that are just left undone, usually probably because of the cost it takes to get those areas. A lot of these areas in general are high cost builds. And so really the next steps is really the shaping the projects and the design, working with the cities to figure out any kind of in-kind contributions from projects that's already been working on or under development right now that we can use. Letters of support for the application, that's going to be vital for the scoring metrics I was showing you. And then continuing really to track MTA for progress updates and staying with the HUD.
Can you go back to the slide with the columns where I was
Sure.
sort of hanging on, sorry. So we have approximately 430,000 households within Chesapeake, Norfolk, Portsmouth, Virginia Beach. And we're talking about approximately 3.5 thousand of that, which is, might be eligible. Is that correct?
Correct.
It's just, I think it's really important that we get to those households. I also want to recognize that that is less than 1% of households. So I think it is really critical for this regional authority to be looking at the bigger picture too. And I know this is what we can do right now, but we need to be serving, not only getting to the underserved and unserved, but affordability, which is, I think, I know in the city of Norfolk, and I think for most of us, is really the issue. So having more competition and having more opportunities to look up to our households is going to be really critical. And that to me is where GTS, we're expecting and hoping that you all are going to be focusing.
Yeah,
That less than 1% is important, and we should take advantage of it because it's government money.
Yeah.
But I just want to be focusing on that as well, the bigger picture.
No, that's a great point. And I just want to point out that, a household, they might say they don't have service, so they might in fact not have service. But when we go out there and provide them using government funds to get them service, we're going to be in that area at that point. And so most likely everyone in that area does not have good service, so it'll be a choice there for them.
That's a really good point, which is others might have service,
Officially,
yeah, accessible, but it might not be affordable. But because we're going to have, your GTS will have the ability to leverage its government funds to get to the community, you're going to have the opportunity to spider out beyond just the one or two households.
right.
Okay. That's fair. Thanks, Noel. Thank you for clarifying. Other comments or questions? All right.
So, no, do you need anything from the cities at this stage in terms of specific projects?
Yeah, no, thanks, Stephen. Yeah, so as we go through developing, of course, the final application design has not been released by DHCD. They're waiting closer to the time for this whole thing to kick off. We do know probably the shape that it's going to take and the projects that we're going to be going after. So there will be contact with the cities to try to figure out those in-kind contributions. And I would expect those relatively soon. Either myself or someone on our team is going to reach out, probably find the best avenue to say, those are projects that's being worked on, and how can we incorporate this into the project design.
And did you say the letters of support? Do you have a date for that?
Those support, we have drafts that we can provide, although I'm sure the cities will have their own. But this is all going to be needed at the time of the application. So we don't need it tomorrow, but this is something that it's going to be needed.
So can you go ahead and get that information to us?
Yes, absolutely.
I know all of us are great at turning things around, but occasionally things get stuck in bureaucracy. So.
A lot of vacation in that time period.
Yeah, so I think if you already have, I can't imagine our letters of support are gonna change from today to when they're actually due. So if you can get the talking points specific to each of the cities and get that into our hands so that we can provide that, I would,
Absolutely.
if you get that done by July 1. Right, no, just get that to us and then we,
Right.
yeah, that just, and then give us a time frame specifically, you need this by X.
Yeah.
I think, can I speak on behalf of my sister cities? That would be helpful. Yes.
Yeah, because if the letters are signed by a city manager or a mayor, yeah, it can take some days and vacations in the summer and just their schedules are tighter than the average employee.
Absolutely. Yeah, we'll have that as well.
Thanks.
Do I remember correctly that when you talked about the applications, then you talked about individual projects? So you're not gonna apply for the whole map. You're going to choose certain areas, is that right? Or,
We are going to be applying for the cities in their entirety.
okay.
Yeah. And then also for each individual zip code in addition, just to make sure. There's benefits, of course, of doing the cities. You can do cost savings of, it's divided against a greater number. But to ensure that we are going to serve everyone, we're also going to make sure that we do the individual.
So if you had to guess, which is very dangerous wherever government is involved, where do you think they'll go? Do you think they'll pick out the individual zip code bundling, or do you think they'll go for a regional? Any idea?
So
I mean, the money is finite.
yeah, there was a lot of great conversation at the workshop around that. Any I don't know, method that takes over 2.5 hours to explain to a group of people and providers.
So in other words, they don't know what they're gonna do.
I think it's very difficult for them, and they themselves said they have finite resources to go through the application, so it's why they chose this method. But no, I think it's really looking at the money and how far it can stretch and the best opportunity for the project that's in the application, unfortunately. So
I think the letters of support from the Southside Network Authority are gonna be close.
absolutely, yes,
Because
absolutely.
if you think about other entities who might wanna do this, they're not gonna have potentially, in our region at least, additional letters of support. So I think that's gonna be a bit of a game changer.
It's showing like a higher level of commitment.
So we'll be a little bit ahead of the game because we're ready to go with this project. And then, do you need letters of support from the General Assembly delegation? And nothing, I mean, why not?
You're asking a question.
Do we need that? I mean, would that be helpful?
I'd imagine it'd be helpful.
I don't think it hurt.
Yeah.
That's what I was gonna say, it can't hurt.
Yeah.
So we probably need to collectively make that ask to get letters of support from the delegation.
And perhaps we could work with our respective government relations staff to help facilitate that. Because unfortunately, the HRPDC hasn't been allowed to hire a government relations person. Sorry, they should have one. But so in the meantime, we can maybe work with our respective staffs to do that. Unless, Bob, you have another idea.
No, I think that's a great idea. And the other thing I was going to mention, we do have a regional network of regional organizations that have been consistent in leaning in with letters of support to support regional initiatives such as this. So we can also stack up, probably 6 to 9 letters from other regional organizations on top of the localities as well. So if we can get that letter, we'll get that started and get to add that to strengthen the application. But if I may, Madam Chair, so it's interesting, is Suffolk, so if you were a recipient of body money or RDOF money, you're not eligible for the bead money.
Correct.
Do you have any sense of, it seems to me there were a lot of places across rural Virginia that did get those monies. And I'm just wondering how much of the competition that may have impacted for us. Do you have any sense of that?
In terms of other providers?
Right, other people like Suffolk across the Commonwealth that aren't gonna be competing with us, is I guess what I'm.
There is a few, I mean, we will, as soon as the new fabric comes out, I'm saying the data fabric that comes out, we'll be able to see and put numbers to.
Because I'm thinking, Al, there were a lot of people, right, that got body and arm off, right?
I'm feeling that too, that there was quite a few.
Yeah, so that could help us.
That's right.
Ms. Wells?
Well, I think you're gonna get our support, obviously, because we want to be successful, and the better support is critical. From a GTS perspective, you're gonna be considered a startup. Is that something that could be against GTS not getting something versus the
Years
guys
of
who've been here a while?
No, I don't believe so. A lot of the scoring criteria, that's, jump back to it. A lot of the scoring criteria, GTS has been, doing for years. Fair labor practices, we've been in government contracting for 20, almost 30 years now. A lot of these things here, speed to deployment, we just submitted a MAC, a large contract for the DoD that has never been delivered early. We delivered it early. They've always had to deliver late. We have lots of experience in a lot of these different realms here that I think are definitely going to play and will rely.
Peter, I think when Noel first talked about speed to deployment, if it's a startup, it's going to take them longer. That's why that app score got 0. But you're not really a startup. You might be new to this specific industry, but you have lots of experience in other large.
I was
Large
thinking ISPs
Yeah.
type of services, that's what I was thinking.
So I was with you as well, but I hear it's a little different when I look back at the speed to deployment.
May I ask a question about the affordability? What does that actually mean? Is that cost to deploy? Is that cost to the customer?
Right, so the first row here would be per passing. This second row, affordability, would be the service. Now, this number hasn't been made yet. When this number comes out, they'll have something to go against. If you say that you're only gonna be able to offer it, it is $130, $129.99. And you say you can offer it at that, you'll get the full points. If you can offer less than that, you'll still get the full points. Anything over that, you get the percentage difference.
And that's price per the household.
Right, for the service.
Citizens, the customer pays.
Right.
Per month or per year?
That'll be per month, yeah. And these are just examples that they.
What? Is that
That's a good question.
well, when we're talking about affordability and
Right.
that's an issue you bring up quite a
Yeah,
bit.
none of the speed stuff is coming to urban areas where affordability is really the biggest issue. This is gonna be get into the folks that are hard to reach right now,
Yeah.
who have nothing other than Starlink or satellite. This is interesting. Any other questions?
Yeah, I got signed up for $129.99.
The affordability, does it talk, so there was a conflict in that some states did not agree with the NTIA issue of pricing, but now you're saying that the criteria includes price point.
So that is the battle there between any of the states that haven't had their volume 2 approved by NTA. There was some rate regulation, a low cost option, and it was said in NTA and how we produced it to NTA in our volume 2 is that it either be done through a formula. They'll come up with some kind of formula to come up with a low cost option. NTIA wanted the states to come out with an exact number. This here is an example. I don't know that Virginia will buckle on that point or not. It's speculation, but here they were providing a number. Either it came out through a formula or someone pulled it out of a hat. So this is the average or FCC average for monthly service.
Anything else? Any other good news that you'd like to share from GTS?
No, like I said, we're really ramping up, outfitting our Lynn Haven headquarters, so that's been really exciting the past couple weeks. Yeah, no, everything's moving along. It's really been great.
Good. Okay, well, we'll do our part to make sure you have a ring to ride on. How about that?
Excellent.
Okay.
And I'll have all that information out to you.
Thanks. Thank you. Okay, now we're on to, is there any old business? Hearing none. Is there any new business? Okay, and this meeting is adjourned, and we will see you all again on July 12th.
Hold on.